presentation when we get started. And I am really pleased today to be joined by Mihala Beckett, who, along with being an IOD member in Glasgow, she is part of the wider B Corp movement across Scotland and is a bit of an expert in this space. I'll let Mihala let you do your full proper introduction, but a huge thank you to everybody for joining us for this session today on B Corp benefits for your business. We will have ample opportunity for Q&A after the presentation, and Mihala has indicated that she is very happy to take questions throughout her presentation. So please just stick your hand up if you would like to come in and ask a question. I will be on hand to keep an eye out for those hands being raised, and also will be using the chat box as a space to record any thoughts, commentary and questions that we want to come in with afterwards. So without further ado, Mihala, it is over to you. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you, Catherine, and welcome everyone. Nice to see a good few people here interested in B Corp. I wonder if I could just share my screen because there's some great visuals I'd like to share with you. If someone could just give me a thumbs up when you can see that, all right? That's great. And I want to make sure I can see you guys. So welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. There's a few things I'd love to cover today. One is, what is the B Corp movement? It's probably something you've heard a bit about and you're all here to hear more. So we'll cover what it is. What are the benefits of your business actually becoming a B Corp beyond being good for people and planet? How you can certify if this is something that you think you might do now or in future, or maybe that you've got some clients or peers that are interested in and you're here for them. And plenty of time for Q&A at the end, but please, as Catherine said, if you just want to raise your hand, shout out, pop a question in the chat as we're going along. No problem. We don't need this to be a serious formal presentation today. And it's worth saying I am going to ask you some questions. So if you can get your fingers ready to type some questions in the chat, that would be really good and really help me to make sure this is a session that you get loads out of. And we're going to start that now. So just to warm your fingers up, what word or phrase do you associate with B Corp? And if you would pop this in the chat, that would be really good. Sorry, John, I'm gonna introduce myself in just a moment. I just want to get you warmed up. Thank you for asking. So B Corp, good, ethical. What else do we have? There's no wrong or right answer here. Risky, external, ethical, overlords. Ooh, interesting. Thanks, John. Legislation, yes. Anything else? I will keep them coming. Interesting. All right, good. Good to get a nice base level of understanding. But John, as you said, you probably want to know who I am. So hello, my name is Mihala Beckett and I am Chief Sustainability Officer at B Corp Connect 3. Connect 3 are based in Glasgow, but serve clients with leadership development. And we basically help businesses grow through their people. We do a lot of work on sustainability and EDI. I'm a certified executive and business coach, so I support businesses one-on-one in teams to grow. I'm a trained B Corp, call it a B leader, B Corp consultant trained by B Lab UK, who is the body, the philanthropic body that runs the B Corp certification. I'm also co-chair with two other business leaders of the B Corp movement in Scotland, which has got two objectives really: to bring B Corps together to help us to learn and share and grow together, and also to widen and broaden the B Corp community up here in Scotland. So that's part of why I'm here today. And my background, I'm an economist by background. My last employed role was for Africa Director at Intrepid Travel, who we took through B Corp, I think in 2019. And that's where I fell in love with the B Corp movement. I thought if I ever worked for or set up my own business in the future, I would only work for companies that were the kind of companies that were open to becoming B Corp. They didn't necessarily have to be B Corp, but the kind of companies that wanted to look after their people and the planet as they grew and served their customers. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And let's get cracking, shall we? So what is B Corp? Well, in 3 words, it's people, planet, profit. We're looking at how to make the B Corp movement more regenerative. It's a big, scary word for a lot of businesses right now. But people, planet, profit. basically a load of businesses that have come together that want to do good. And in fact, there's a whole movement of businesses that say, actually, can we be part of the solution to some of the big challenges of our time rather than just contribute to be part of the problem? How can we do that? And that we are stronger together if we support each other rather than just being one lone company that's trying to save the world. Um, And I kind of like to introduce B Corp by saying it's kind of three things. And one is it's a movement, it's a community of businesses. And I know this is a bit long-winded, but I want to read you some of this because I think this is really powerful. And this is why I like to be in the B Corp Club. To be into the B Corp Club, you have to do a number of things, which we'll go through. But you have to sign this declaration of interdependence. So we're used to competition and competing with our peers. But it's basically, if you want to become a B Corp, you have to sign a declaration that says we envisage a global economy that uses business as a force for good. This economy is comprised of a new type of corporation, the B Corporation, which is purpose-driven and creates benefit for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. As B Corporations and leaders of this emerging economy, we believe that we must be the change we seek to see in the world, that all business ought to be conducted as if people and place mattered, that through our products, our practices, and our profits, we should aspire to do no harm and benefit all. To do so requires that we act with the understanding that we're each dependent upon another and thus responsible for each other and future generations. Now that's inspiring for me. Do we always get it right? No, but do we sign up that we want to do our best towards this? Yes. So it's a movement, it's a community, it's businesses that are acting together and say, yeah, let's see if we can learn and do better. It's a continuous improvement thing. And a load of good businesses have joined this. So I have to update this every time I do this presentation. The last time I did it, I think it was in August, we had 8,000 B Corps in the world. We've now got 9,000 B Corps in the world. So it's a tiny portion of the business community, but it's growing and it's growing exponentially. And most businesses are small businesses. Most businesses are B2B businesses that you never would have heard of, possibly businesses like some of the businesses we've got represented today. And these are some of the ones that you would have heard of. You would have heard of Jamie Oliver, Body Shop. Probably need to start removing that one, unfortunately. Tom's Shoes, Tony's Chocolonely, Pucker Teas, Allbirds. So this is the kind of business club you're joining. These are the companies that you probably see that these have all got really good products and services. Patagonia are known for their quality and they want to join in community and be better and learn from others. So that's the global community. UK community, we've now got 2,324 at least. I think that stat is a few days old. No doubt going to be more. So actually the B Corp is the second largest community of B Corps in the world, just behind the US. And per business, we've actually got the highest density of B Corp. So it's really, really popular here. The last time I looked at Scotland, for any of you that have joined in Scotland, we had 85 B Corps last I looked. And again, I'm hearing of them being certified all the time. So again, a small number, but also growing exponentially, which is really exciting. So I said it's a movement and a community, one thing. The other thing I'd like to share that maybe is less known, it's actually a different way of doing business. It's a business model. So most businesses are set up purely to maximize shareholder value, which is profit. And even if you think, oh no, that's not why I set my business, I set it up for lots of reasons. But if you look back at your articles of association that you've lodged at Companies House, it does have a paragraph in there which says, as a director, I promise to maximize profits. If you were to become a B Corp, we need to make a really small change to those articles of association and actually get it legally changed. And the small change is, as a director, I promise to consider all stakeholders in my decisions for my business. That's not to say I prioritize my customers over the planet, or I prioritize my workforce over the local community, or I prioritize my suppliers over my profit. But I look at all my stakeholders and actually think, is this a good decision? And you have to make that legal change to your business to actually become a B Corp business, and say it's a small legal change, but the implications could be huge depending on how you're running your businesses at the moment. Some of you might be thinking, I'm already running my business in that way. Then great, come join us, lock it in. It's called Mission Lock because it locks your mission into the future. So if you were to sell your company, that legal change still exists. So that's what you can do on an individual basis, but actually on a wider basis. And Catherine and I were talking about lobbying just before you all came on, actually. And there's something that B Corp communities and companies are lobbying. Mary Portas is leading it for us as well, quite big business celebs. And it's basically to lobby the UK government that we don't need to make this change as B Corps, that There's something called the Better Business Act, which you can join this website and sign up to if it's something you'd like to have a look at and support. It's basically to say that all companies should have the direct responsibilities to be responsible and make decisions, taking a view on all stakeholders. It shouldn't just be B Corps. So we're trying to say we don't need B Corp in the future. At the moment, unfortunately, we do still need it. But we're lobbying to make ourselves redundant, which is great. So if you'd like to join that, there's the website, and I can send these slides on later. So I've said it's a community and a movement. I said it's a different way of doing business, a business model. The third thing, which I think is the thing that most people have heard of, is a best practice framework. So it is a framework that asks you, what are you doing now in terms of creating impact for your various stakeholders? What would you like to do? And it gives you inspiration of how you could become a better business. And if you can use the BIA, the Business Impact Assessment, to look at where you are now, where you'd like to be. And at the point where you've got enough points through the framework to become a B Corp, you can go and get yourself verified. And we can talk a little bit about that later. There's two other things that you need to commit to. One is that legal change that I just spoke about. And the third one is impact reporting. So it's not just about once and done. Every year that you don't recertify, you actually need to provide an impact report, because it's actually all about transparency. Transparently saying, what did I say I would do for my stakeholders this year? What were the KPIs, not just around profit, but around people and planet in my business? What did I actually do? How did I perform against those goals? And what do I want to do next year to be a better business for people and planet? So there's quite a lot of transparency requirements around that. And you do recertify every 3 years. So that's the best practice framework. So now I'm going to talk you through it, but I'm going to be asking you another question in a moment. Unless there are any questions already. Just looking at Catherine. All good. All right. So these are the 5 areas plus a disclosure questionnaire that are in the B Corp Impact Assessment, the BIA. They ask you questions about your governance as a company, about how you look after your workers, how well you look after broader stakeholders, the environment, and your customers. And this is just is there anything we should know about? Have you got any taxes unpaid? These sorts of things. Do you serve any markets that we wouldn't be so sure about you being a good business? And I'm just going to show you what's in the 5 different areas, but a question for you to think about while I'm going through the 5 areas, because I'm going to come back to and ask you a question at the end. When you're going through these areas, have a think, for my business, or if you're not a business, if you're thinking of it with some of your clients in mind, perhaps, where have we already got strengths in? Where are we already creating positive impact for our clients, for our customers, for our workforce, for the planet? And question 2, where are the opportunities here? Actually, what could we look into to actually be a better business? So if you can keep those 2 questions in mind while I briefly take you through the 5 areas. So governance asks you about, what's your mission statement as a company? Why are you here? Why do you exist? What value are you trying to create there out in the world? Because unless you're creating value, you haven't got a customer base and you're not in business. So we're all here for a reason. How do you make decisions regarding social and environmental management? Do you make any decisions? How could you? Are you just taking all decisions based on what's going to be most profitable? Or are you actually thinking, what's the carbon implication of that? Or what would the workforce implication be of that? And of course, all these things, if you're not sure, then at least it'll give you some ideas. Stakeholder engagement. Are you asking your customer what's important to them? I had a veg box go and ask their customers, if we could be better, what would you like us to do? Is it reducing plastic? Is it reducing the miles on delivery? Or is it saving more wonky veg? Have you asked your customers how would they like you to be better? Ethics and transparency. Do you have a code of ethics for your workforce, for your suppliers? Do you get people to sign a conflict of agreement? Things like that. Transparency. Do you provide an impact report every year? Would you like to? Obviously, like, revenue and profit is still really, really important. If you're not making a profit, you can't do good things in the world. So this is also important part of being a B Corp and being profitable. And then it's asking about your business model. Do you have the old capitalist articles association that I talked about, or are you actually looking at all stakeholders? So that's governance. It's how do you set yourself up for success? What have you got underlying the decisions that you make on being better? And then we go through the areas. So environment. Now, a lot of people think that B Corp is probably all about the environment. Well, funnily enough, it's actually only one of 5 modules. It's a big module, but it is only one of 5. So it will ask you, at the moment, do you keep track of any of the environmental KPIs in your business? Do you know about your energy, your carbon, your water usage, your waste. And then it asks implications like more specifically on the impact on air and climate, on land and biodiversity, especially waste, at least is the most important thing for most businesses, your water use, if relevant. Some of these things won't be material for you, in which case you can just go, not really much. And that's okay. You don't need full marks across everything. You just need enough points across here to show that you're doing good things. If these things aren't material for you, at the moment, that's okay. And then it asks you actually, do you do anything particularly innovative in the way that you produce things? If you're a manufacturing company that's environmentally friendly, I had one client who was using it was a coffee processor, and they were using their coffee husks to put in the furnace to fire their coffee production, things like that. And then it'll ask actually, do you have any products or service with a positive environmental impact? So what I'm doing with you today and my sustainability consulting gets points because I'm helping other businesses to be good. Equally, I worked with what they have here. I worked with a keep cup manufacturer. The whole point of being is to help save the planet, right? And you don't need to be that kind of company to be a B Corp, but if you do, you unlock some more points, and that's great. If not, then just really look at your operations. How could you be better for the environment? So have a think about where you are on those. So we've got two modules which are more on the social impact side, and one is your customer. Now, if you are a profitable business, then you are creating good impact for your customer. They're telling you because they're paying for your stuff, they're giving you money. But actually, how good are you being for them? So how well are you looking after your customers? How's your customer service? What quality assurance are you providing in your goods and services? What's the customer feedback like? Are you asking for feedback? Are you doing anything with your feedback? Are you monitoring it? Are you evaluating it? Have you got targets? And are you actually, most importantly, closing the feedback loop? Are you using that feedback to actually provide better quality, better good for your customers? Are you looking after the customer's data? So that's every company, right? Every company can get better at that. And believe me, looking after your customers better is going to look after your bottom line better. Absolutely. And then there are some businesses that really do address social or even environmental problems through their businesses. There are some mental health companies, for example. The whole point of them in being business is to improve the mental health of the people that they serve. They would open up some extra points there. But you don't have to be that kind of business. You can still provide lots of customer value through a normal bricks and mortar business. And we've got one more area. So we've gone through customer and we've gone through, we've got workforce. So this is obviously a big one. Every company has workers. And in fact, even if you're a one-person limited company, you can still become a B Corp. You just won't have the worker module, so you need to get your points across the other four areas. But if you do have workforce, then this module will ask you how well are you looking after your employees financially, how well are you paying them, benefits, bonuses, etc. How well are you looking after their health and wellness and safety? What are you doing about their career development? How are they progressing through your company and acquiring useful skills? Are they engaged? Are they happy? How do you handle their feedback? And then finally, you can unlock some extra points for things like being employee owned or self-managed business, which is rare, but still it's a really good way of obviously empowering and engaging your staff. So have a think about the good things you're doing for your workforce and where there might be some opportunities. And finally, we have community, which is all of the other stakeholders that aren't either a customer or your workforce. And it looks at how you recruit, because part of your community impact is actually providing a good economic benefit in the local area. And one way you can do is by employing people. So it looks at the diversity, equity, inclusion of how you're bringing people on. Are you a diverse and inclusive employer? It's looking at how much money you're spending in the local area. Civic engagement. So this is your giving back. So are you using either your voice, lobbying for the Better Business Act, for example? Are you using your money? Are you giving to charitable causes that are important to you that you think you can have an impact on? Or are you using your time? So are you volunteering or doing pro bono work for causes which are close to your heart? And then we've also got a huge section here on your supply chain management. How are you encouraging your supply chain to get with the program and be better for people and planet, and who are you choosing to work with and not work with and improve? And then there are some business models which also, if you're giving a lot of money or a lot of time to these community areas, then you can unlock some extra points. All right, that's enough talking from me. Those are the 5 areas. So we had governance, we had environment, we had workers, we had customer, we had community. So I'd love to hear from you either vocally or in the chat.
Just while we're waiting on people to come in, Mihala Jones asked a question.
Okay.
What exactly are the DEI criteria?
So it's not criterion at the moment, and I'll come on to that. At the moment, it's not criteria that you have to meet, but it'll ask you a lot of questions. So do you measure who is in your workforce at the moment? So how diverse is your workforce? And it will look at factors. The main factors it looks at are age and race and social economic background and gender. And then there is an other. And it will ask what proportion of your workforce are this, and do you have any targets for this, and what are you doing about to improve it? And then on recruitment, it will ask, what do you do to ensure inclusive recruitment? And some of the options are making sure that your job descriptions are vetted to be more inclusive, and in recruiting through certain agencies that actually support certain people that are hard to access the workforce.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mihala. I've also just dropped a link to the page on the B Corp, bcorporation.net website as well. Another question that's come through is how does B Corp interact with existing ISO accreditations?
Yeah, great answer. Great question even. What it does, it uses ISOs as evidence. So for everything that you say, yes, we've got that, or yes, we do that, B Corp will ask, what's your evidence for it? So first of all, you will just get points for having third-party certifications in certain areas, which you'll have to show. And then because you've got ISO accreditations, you will already provided the evidence. So basically it just helps you with your evidence. And it's worth just saying, and I have another question, but on EDI, it's about to be much stronger because there are some new standards coming in, and I will just touch on those. They're not finalized, but John, for especially you, I can send you on to the new standards, which they are just finalizing, and there actually is going to be a really specific emphasis on DEI, so that would be good news for you. Were there any other questions in the chat, Catherine?
Not currently, that's them all answered, and there are no hands up at the moment too.
Would anyone like to put in the chat areas? I think they're actually a company doing quite well on this, or, oh, that's a really good thing for us to look into further.
I'm quite happy to jump in just and start a conversation as people are having a think, because I know that it's something that we've been very mindful of as Institute of Directors, as an organisation. We have been really keen to try and ensure that, one, we have a membership that is reflective of that, vast, diverse landscape of leaders, across sector, across industry, right across the UK. And also how we then can make sure that the information and the events and the resources that we are providing help our members deliver the best business that they can be. And a lot of that does link to bottom line, but it's also environmental, it's productivity, it's inclusive recruitment practice, all of that. So I think it's something that we are definitely on a journey as an organisation to do better. But I think I've been with the IOD for 3 years next week actually, and I am just amazed at the strides forward that we have taken in that time period. I feel really, really pleased about what we've been able to do.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think they were thinking about the EDI question as an example. I mean, it kind of asks who's on your board, who's in your senior management. The last company I was working with, all the customers and most of the staff were kind of women in their 20s and 30s, and all the board and all the senior management were men in their 50s and above. And it's like, oh, how are we making decisions reflective of our staff and reflective of our customers? Oh, we've got some work to do here. And it's a great way of highlighting your blind spots. Whether you do anything about them, up to you.
Exactly. And now we have some really interesting commentary in the chat as well. So I'll hand back over to you, Mihala.
Great. Yes, I can see that now. So Isabel, thanks. Helping our customers reduce their carbon impacts. Brilliant. And cost of products to people with certain health conditions. Ooh, excellent. So if you were to look through the B Corp impact assessment, Isabel, you would be able to see how you can celebrate what you're doing in terms of helping your clients to reduce their carbon. You'd get that in the environmental area. And if you're actually supporting people with health conditions, you might also get some points in and some ideas to even do better in the customer section. So that's really good. Let's celebrate that. And do feel free to have a look at the impact assessment just to be like, what would be the next level for this? How would we evidence this better? How would we make this more systematic rather than something we do occasionally? So it might give you some really good ideas to getting to the next level. Well done, that sounds great. And A Walker, also an environmental consultancy. Hope we'd get some credit on environment. You definitely would. I guess, but it would mainly be asking you on like how do you keep your own house in order? And it's always good to be able to show we don't just support our customers to do good things, we're good too, and we're learning. As I say, it's not a once and done thing, but absolutely you would be getting some good credit in the environmental and potential customer section too. So thank you for putting those in there. All right, so talked a little bit about what B Corp is, and we've talked a little bit about the assessment framework. So that's given you some ideas of what you might find if you were to have a look in there. Just a little bit on benefits to your business. So why would you do it now? Probably you're all here because you think actually this would be a good thing to do. So I'm probably preaching to the converted. But here are, I'd say, 4 of the 5 reasons why people tend to start looking at B Corp. It might just because you feel like it's the right thing to do. And there is good evidence to suggest that looking at something like B Corp and going through your company with a fine-tooth comb, finding all the blind spots, finding what you're doing well, finding what you're not doing so well, not only helps with the performance of your business. If you get eyes on every single area of your business, it very likely that you've now figured out what you need to improve and you start improving it. You're more likely to attract investment because you're a company that's gone through, again, your company with a fine-tooth and you've looked at your social responsibility as well as environmental responsibility, so you are a better investment. Most of the B Corps I speak to say, oh my goodness, since I became a B Corp, the amount of people that have applied for our jobs has been ridiculous, and no one's leaving because we're a good employer and we're showing it, and everyone says our interviews, I applied here because you said you're a B Corp. So and you've obviously got to do the right thing, but actually looking at how you can improve your workforce's engagement satisfaction at work is obviously really good for your talent. And I noticed that Scottish Government recently did a report saying that 67% of consumers will pay for products or services that are committed to better positive social environmental impact. Now, obviously, there's a big say-do gap. We would like the idea, a lot of us like the idea of buying goods and services that are better businesses. We don't always follow through with that. But if you think about the companies that we had on there, like Patagonia and Ben and Jerry's, you buy them because they're a really good quality product, but also you kind of feel good doing it. You know, you're giving your money to a better company than some others. And there has been some research on B Corp, and I'm just going to say I'm sharing this, but it's a really small piece of research and it's now a bit out of date. But we've had the pandemic since, so I think they're now going to update this research. Now we've kind of got those fairly anomaly years out the way. But this is a piece of research done in 2021, and it compared 100 B Corps with average SMEs. And as I say, it's a small sample, so I don't want to over egg this. But none of this surprises me. So looking at the cohort of 100 B Corps, they had faster annual growth in turnover over the 4 years, actually growth of 26% between 2017 and 20, compared to average companies, it was just 5%. They had much higher employee retention and actually had an attrition rate of 8%, which is half the national average. They had higher levels of innovation. 43% of B Corps have applied for or received R&D tax credits, as opposed to 6% of the wider SME population. And actually, they were much more successful in securing equity finance. 70% of B Corps that applied for it got equity finance compared to 56. So I say I don't want to over-egg that, but none of this surprises me because these are all companies that have said we want to be better, we're committing to be better, we've committed in our legislation we're going to be better. And we're going to do better, right? Because we've got eyes on our performance, we're supporting our stakeholders. But I would like to see this updated and it to be a bigger survey. And then the other really big benefit that I've already alluded to is the community. These kind of companies, and once you become a B Corp, or even before, you get to hang out and be local. So we've got, if anyone is in Scotland, we've got a B Local, which is a meetup with the Scotland B Corps 2 weeks a day, actually in Glasgow. collaborate co-working space, and we get together and we share and we learn from each other, and we'll probably have a few drinks and some nibbles, but we'll actually get together. There's the Beehive, which is the online community where we get to share and learn with our fellow B Corps. We just had a B Corp festival. We had 2,000 B Corps in Oxford for 2 days, where we all shared and learned and got to know each other. And there are various working groups. So if you want to join a working group with other B Corps on employee engagement or reducing your carbon or self-management or whatever, you get to go and join these companies and learn from them. So it's the community, which, to be honest, is a big pull for most of us. So we've gone through what is B Corp. We've gone through why you might become a B Corp, other than just feeling an urge to make sure that your business is doing good. So for those of you with clients that might want to become a B Corp, here's what you need to do. At the moment, this is going to change next year. But at the moment, and it's been like this since it began, you need to go through that B Corp impact assessment, answer the questions, and you need to get 80 points over those 5 modules, or 4 if you don't have any workers, which is a decently high level of social and environmental performance. But at the moment, there is very little things you have to do. You have to change your legal documents. You can get, which might give you up to 10 points. You have to get 70 points from elsewhere. So at the moment, it's very inclusive. This is going to change, which I'll explain. You have to then get verified with the standards team, show them your evidence. And then you need to sign that declaration of interdependence, which I went through at the beginning, to say I'll actually work with some of my competitors to work on modern slavery or to work on our carbon, etc. You then need to pay a certification fee, which is an annual fee, which starts at £1,000 for very small companies and can go up to 50,000 if you're a much bigger company. And it basically depends on your revenue. And there's a small submission fee, and I'm happy to share what those rates are. They're all transparent and on the website. And then, of course, you need to make that legal change to your business, get a lawyer to change your articles of association, and you need to commit to that transparency. So you'll recertify every 3 years. The 2 intervening years, you need to produce that impact report, which shows how you became an even better business in the year. And then just something on eligibility, if you're thinking, well, does this apply to me? Basically, you can be any size and in any industry. It's why I kind of like B Corp. It's global, it's for services, it's manufacturing, it's for farming, it is for one-person businesses, and it's for multinationals. You just have to be competitive. So it's not for charities, it's not for monopolies. The good thing is that if you are a charity or a non-profit, you can use the framework. The framework is a free open source piece of kit that you can use. Oh, I wonder how my charity could be better. You can have a look at it. You just won't be able to certify as a B Corp, because this is really used to help for-profit become better. And to be a certified B Corp, you need to be in year of at least 1 year of operation, because you need to share a year of operational data. If you're less than a year, but you'd love to, for example, signal to investors that you're on your B Corp journey, you can apply for pending B Corp status, which is basically doing it as if you're a year in, saying in a year's time, this is where we'll be, dear investors. Invest in us for setting up a really good company. So hopefully, if you've got any questions around that, to answer. I don't know if there are any questions. Quite no, good.
There's one question in the chat from Isabel, and it says, if we are pre-revenue, can we start the assessments to prepare for revenue?
Yes, absolutely. And I would say I've actually worked with quite a lot of businesses that are just setting up, because honestly, if you set up as a B Corp, I set our business up to give 5% of our revenue to charity, to the Hunger Project. That's really hard 50 years in. You're going to miss that 5%. If you've always seen that 5% go out the door, absolutely fine. So I think if you can, the earlier you can do it, the easier it is. And maybe the earlier you are, not everything will apply. But at least you've had a look through and think, oh, when we start to take on staff, when we start to look at pensions for our staff, when we start to look at giving some shares to our staff, you can see, oh, that would be good practice. And you can totally apply for that pending B Corp now. But when you submit for actual B Corp, you'll need 1 fiscal year, whatever your fiscal year is, of data, because you want to show this is how revenue was, this is what our profit was, this is what we did with it. But yeah, good question. I hope that answers her question. All right, I did allude to the new standards. So before I finish, I just want to talk through what these are most likely to be. So the main change is that I think let's celebrate the fact that B Corp is still niche, but because it's become more popular and it's kind of put its head above the parapet, it's starting to get heckled for things, which is great because it means, okay, time to change. It's been very inclusive, as I said, and until next year, we'll be able to get points from anywhere. So you can be really, really good for the environment and less good for workers, or really, really good for workers and less good for the environment, as long as you meet a high standard across. Um, that's all changing next year. I don't think the subjects inside B Corp impact assessment is going to be largely different, but it's upping some areas and it's actually asking for some minimum standards, which is great. So for John that asks about JEDI, so it's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. There are going to be some minimum areas here, and then you can also get higher areas. It's fair wages, workplace culture, purpose and stakeholder governance, human rights. That's coming out a lot more in the new one. Climate action has been separated because it's quite a big thing in itself, away from circularity and environmental stewardship. Lobbying is going up. So, Catherine, if the IOD do some things on helping us to lobby, that would be wonderful for B Corp because we've all got this new commitment, and there are a few other things. But so this is how it's going to look in the future. Not hugely different, but some things are just becoming. We've moved on a long way in the last few years in terms of what's good practice, and it's beyond time that B Corp start responding to that. So things are going to change. But if you were to open the B Corp impact assessment now and start working towards it, the new ones aren't going to shock you. So I'd stay still. Log in, and there will be a transition from one set of standards to the next. I'm not sure I can answer too many more questions about this, but it will be coming into force at some point in 2025, and they have said they're going to help businesses to transition, so it's not going to shock anyone. That's all I'll say on that. Happy to try and answer more questions on the new standards. But I guess just to talk some next steps before I open up for Q&A. So happy for this to be sent out to you guys if that's helpful with the links. I would just say, get yourself an account. It's free, it's open source, it just needs an email account. So have a look at the impact assessment and just see what it inspires in you, what ideas you can do for becoming a better business. You don't have to be a B Corp. I'm not on commission from them. But I would just say use the framework for some good ideas of how you can go to the next level of being better for your workforce, for the planet, in your governance. If you are in Scotland, we've got a LinkedIn group for anyone curious about B Corp. And as I say, we've got a social in 2 weeks' time. Welcome to tell you about that. If you are elsewhere in the country or even overseas, there will be a B local for you to join. So get connected and start chatting to B Corps in your area. You're welcome to connect to me and have a one-on-one call if it's something you think actually you'd like to check. Well, what about my business? Is it the right time? Is it the right thing for me? I'm happy to have a brief chat with you about that. And generally just celebrate taking action to be a better business today because you came here, you took your time to learn, and hopefully you've taken something away that will help your business to be better, even if you don't open up that B Corp impact assessment, and that would make me very happy. So that's all I wanted to share. I've probably opened lots of cans of worms. You might have questions, so I'm very happy to answer whatever's in the room.
Thanks very much, Mahala. And just as we give people time to gather their thoughts, I wanted to pick up on that, new standards, or those new standards coming through. Perhaps that's a conversation we should have about in another session as and when they are live, so that we could think about the changes. And I was also really struck by that study that you referenced, and I wondered, you commented on the sample size and the fact that it was pre-COVID, but I mean, my understanding is that the B Corp movement has at least quadrupled in size since then. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what further research comes out, and I suppose on the back of these new standards being introduced. But we have dropped a whole lot of links in the chat as well. So for anybody that's not familiar with Zoom, you are able to save the chat and download it to your desktop so that you can revisit those links later on. I think if you just click on the wee 3 dots at the top of the chat, there's an option to save the chat if that's useful for anyone at all. There haven't been any questions that have come through in addition, so I just want to throw it out to the room to ask if anybody wants to come in and take advantage of us having an expert in the space to ask any practical questions. I wonder, Mahal, I mean, you've obviously been involved and I think you're co-chair of the B Corp movement in Scotland. We've talked a lot about how becoming a B Corp can be beneficial for your bottom line, and I think that's something that is very relevant, particularly for our SME members. I just wondered if you could talk a wee bit about some of the mistakes that people or traps that people might fall into when they start on this journey and things to be aware of that might be quite helpful just as, everyone is mindful of starting their assessment and things to look out for.
Good question. Yes. I think the first one is being like, oh, that's exciting. Let me do it. Like, let me do it. Have a look at it tomorrow in that half an hour I've got. I think what I would say is the B Corp impact assessment, because it's very inclusive and it's so exhaustive, is huge. That's quite a lot of questions. So not only is it a little bit overwhelming in terms of the state, it can also be a little bit unnerving because there are a lot of things that you'll go through and you don't do right now. So I think my big piece of advice would be, if you want to have a look at it, maybe find 5 half an hours that you can look at the 5 different modules. Do one, so it's not so overwhelming. And two, so it doesn't put you in a bad mood. Just go into it with a really open mind in terms of, oh, I wonder what I could learn. One thing I could learn today about how I could look after my workforce better, or one thing I could learn today about how I can measure my environmental performance, as opposed to just being like, oh God, it's too much and I'm a rubbish business and we know this near this. And I think the second thing I would say is that it's a journey. So if you start to embark on it, have a look at what your baseline is. So when I work with people, I will go through it once with them and say, well, this is your baseline. You've got 45 points. Well done. And given that we've gone through it and we've said A, B, and C would be a really good idea, let's look at how many points this would get us. And let's set a roadmap in terms of what makes sense to us, what is good business, what's material to us, and actually just start working on the things which are win-wins. This is blatantly going to be good for my customer and for my workforce, so I'm like, it makes sense to do, and try not to think of it as some overwhelming task where you need to do all the things. Just use it as good inspiration on your journey and keep revisiting it, because for some businesses that are already set up to serve certain people and planet, you're probably going to fly through it. Other businesses, actually, there's just lots of food for thought here, so try not to let it overwhelm you would be my big piece of advice.
That's really, really helpful. And I think that time piece is very important. And I suppose I would just throw out there to those on the call that within our network and within the IOD community across the UK, we have a number of members who are already in that space. They are certified. They are living that, walking that walk, not just talking that talk. So, we have a brilliant community who are only too willing to share their experiences and their expertise. So we can help with that and we can connect you to, like-minded individuals or organizations that are in the same space. So we'd throw that out there to be mindful of at the same time. I'm
Look
not
out for the
having.
bee.
Oh
You will
yes.
start to see it everywhere now. Ask them. We've all signed not just to be interdependent in terms of working with other B Corps, but actually to up-level whole industries. So you will not get a no from a B Corp if you ask, could you tell me a little bit about your journey and some tips and tricks? You will not, I promise you, you will not get a no. So yeah, that's a good advice, Catherine.
Brilliant. Thank you. We don't seem to have any further questions coming through. I'm assuming people are looking at links and processing what you have just talked through. But I think an action point for us is definitely to keep those new standards in mind and maybe look at doing something in the future just to kind of draw a lot of the learning together. If there is nothing else coming through by way of question, can I just throw out a huge thank you to you, Mihala, for giving up your time to come along and talk to us today. Oh, and just there's a question that's just popped through.
Right.
It's always the way. Cindy's asking, are there plans to add monitoring requirements on disabled people in B Corp workplaces? I'm a consultant specialising in disability, so this is probably an obvious question for me.
Good question. And I actually, one of my clients who wrote is actually disability. I did actually help a B Corp consultant to become B Corp recently, and he spoke at the B Corp Festival. So this is something that they are keen to put front and center. Monitoring requirements, I guess that's a strong term. This would come into EDI stats at the moment in the current old version of at the moment, I think that's the only place you would see it in the EDI area. But in terms of fair work and workplace culture and JEDI, watch this space. They're really strengthening, and they actually have had a disability panel making sure that the next standards are more inclusive in that respect. So watch this space, and I can also send you the thoughts on the new standards, so you can have a look. They have people like my client have actually been supporting them on the new standards. So I hope so. I hope so. Watch the space. Good question, Cindy. Thank you.
Thank you. There's nothing else coming through, Mihala, so I would suggest that we give everybody 10 minutes or so back. People are saying thank you very much, really informative. We give everybody 10 minutes back to get that cup of tea before they start their afternoons. But thank you so much for joining us today, for giving up your lunch breaks. And thank you, Mihala, for being just fabulous as ever. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with us. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of day.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you. Thanks, Catherine. See you. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.